Here we go! All around our planet Earth, we remember Jesus' birth. It's Christmas around the world.
Welcome once again to Christmas Around the World. I'm your host, Christina, and today I have a very special guest from Scotland, also across the pond. This gentleman is married to my lovely Aunt Betty, which means that I have a Scottish uncle. Yes, his name is Robert Dennison Wood. Uncle Robert is joining me today all the way from Chile, but he is originally from Scotland. Uncle Robert is a mechanical engineer and has lived in many countries around the world, but he considers himself to be a Scot at heart. Isn't that right, Uncle Robert?
Well, it's perfectly correct, Christina. I was born in a little village called Bournemouth, near the border with England. And of course, the Scots were always fighting the English, not on the battlefield now, but we still came from the village. It was a fishing village on the coast, and I went to primary school in the same village, so I consider that my community.
Fantastic. Uncle Robert, what would you say, considering the size of Scotland? It's not a very big country, but you all have enormous patriotism. I've heard you since I was a child speaking about your Scottish heritage and all that. So would you say that even from one small village to the next, there's a difference in culture, in the way of being?
There was, but television ruined that. Everybody gets Americanized now, but there was certainly a difference. Even from the next town, they speak a little different. The dialect, we speak a dialect in Scotland, of course. And our dialect in Bournemouth is a little different from the next town, Eyemouth, where I went to high school.
Once again, thank you so much for coming here and speaking to us about your background, about your experiences. And I really want to ask you, Uncle Robert, what does Christmas mean to you?
Yes, that's a big question. And I would ask, first of all, what do we mean by Christmas? Because, as we all know, there's a secular Christmas, which is all about Christmas trees and Santa Claus and presents and Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. And there is the true meaning of Christmas, which is the birth of Jesus Christ. So it's really the second that has meaning for me. But I want to talk a little bit about the secular Christmas. As I say, we are from the north of Europe, a cold climate. And in the winter time, the sun gets very low in the sky. And the nations, the pagan nations of Northern Europe, had a big feast when the sun began to return. Of course, we know that the solstice is the 21st of December.
That's right.
Had their feast just after the solstice.
Mm-hmm.
And when I have a theory that when the missionaries came to Christianize the Northern Europe, they realized that they could never make these people give up their feast. So they decided to make it Christ Mass. So you have this celebration of the two really at the same time. And really sadly, nowadays, it's more of going back more to a secular Christmas again. I would like to read just a little verse in Luke's Gospel, chapter 2, verse 28, speaking about Simeon, an old man that lived in Jerusalem, and God revealed to him that he wouldn't die until he had seen the Messiah. And he came into the temple when Jesus was there with his parents, the baby Jesus. He took the child in his arms and praised God, saying, Lord, now I can die in peace. As you promised me, I have seen the Savior you have given to all people. He is a light to reveal God to the nations, and he is the glory of your people, Israel.
Isn't that something?
So that's what Christmas means. Now I can die in peace. Now that's a great thing, that we can look forward to the end of life, to die in peace.
So what
And
you're
it's Christmas.
saying is that even though we're celebrating a birth, we can, in a way, be happy about death during this time.
Why was Jesus born? He says, I have seen the Savior you have given to all people. What does Jesus save us from? He saves us from a meaningless life and nothing beyond. That's what Jesus saves us from. He's given us a meaning in life, a purpose in life, and he's given us a hope beyond the grave. So because of that, we can die in peace. And really, that's what Christmas means to me. It says a light to reveal God to the nations. When God created the heaven and the earth in Genesis, the first thing he said was, let there be light. And really, the scientists haven't yet explained what light is, whether it's a wave or whether it's particles or what, they don't know. It's part of the mystery. But in the New Testament, God begins in the very same way. Let there be light. He gave Jesus for a light to us all, to guide us. I don't know if you've ever walked in darkness. Electricity came to our part of the world in 1951. I was 9 years old. And I can remember the days of kerosene lamps. And, at times there was total darkness. We found nowadays, I don't think there's any place on earth really that's totally dark unless you go down into a cave somewhere.
I agree. Yeah, it's practically impossible to go anywhere where it's completely dark.
No, if it hadn't been for Jesus' birth, we would be walking in darkness, just stumbling through life without any guidance, without any purpose. So that's really what Christmas means.
I see you're a man of very deep faith. Is this how you were raised? And is this how you would celebrate Christmas growing up, really with this meaning behind Christmas?
Yes. My dad gave me a little Bible when I was 4 years old, just starting to read. So really, that has been my privilege. Early in life, I was taught about Jesus, his life, his example, and his death on the cross for our sins. And that really has been about celebrating Christmas. I don't know if you want me to go into a little bit about celebrating, because we did have the two celebrations. We were still a little bit pagan, I guess. We had the secular celebration too.
Well,
even at home, we used to hang up our stockings for Santa Claus. I didn't really believe it, but we got some nice toys.
I mean, you're getting free presents, right? You can't complain about that.
In those days with the log fires, there's a big white chimney, and they used to say Santa came down the chimney. I don't know what to tell the kids nowadays, but I never really believed it anyway. But anyway, Christmas Eve, we hung up our stockings. And in the morning, they were always filled, an apple in the toe of one and an orange in the other, and full of nuts and chocolates and goodies.
So you see,
anyway,
that's interesting, because
that was the secular way.
It's secular, but at the same time, I think that it's a very wonderful way of being grateful for, relatively simple things like food, right? Because nowadays, the kids, they want the latest gadgets and toys and gizmos, right? So I don't know if someone would be happy with an orange in their stocking these days.
That's what we got.
And were you happy with that?
There were no bananas. There were no bananas when I was a kid either, just after the war. I didn't see a banana until I was about 4 or 5 years old.
Wow. And something that's so normal for us nowadays with
but that is the link between the two Christmases, is the children, because we're celebrating the birth of a child. And to us, a child is born. So it's a feast. And then, of course, the gifts come from the wise men that came from the East and offered gifts.
That's right.
Jesus.
Gold,
so
frankincense, and myrrh.
It's really, the gifts should really be for the kids, not for adults. It's become so commercialized nowadays.
So speaking of that, and kids and all about Christmas, do you have any particular Christmas memory that you remember as a child growing up in Scotland?
Yeah, what I really did like, in those days, there was a real community life. And the village hall was the center of the community. As I say, that was before television. Television came in around 1951, but the same time as electricity. And it kind of spoiled the community life in the village. But in those days, and maybe they still do, I don't know, I haven't been there for a long time, but we used to have a Christmas party in the village hall. And all the adults were there too, lead the proceedings, and we would have party games, the Grand Old Duke of York and the Farmers in His Den and Old Roger, all these games we played together. And then round about 6 o'clock, there'd be a knock at the door, and Santa would come in with his big bag bulging with toys and gave out toys to all the kids. And it was really nice. It was something that I really looked forward to and really enjoyed.
I'm sure it was all the more special because you were a child right around when the war was ending, right? World War II. So
I
there
was
wasn't.
born in the darkest days of World War II, March 22nd, 1942.
Wow.
So, like I say, I'm not a baby boomer, I'm a baby buster.
You're a baby
It was-
buster. All right.
There were only 30 of us in primary school in 7 grades. There were 4 in my class, but they combined the classes together, 3 in the little room, 4 in the big room. And that was it.
Wow.
So only 29, 30 students in the whole school. And all the time I came through school, they were building bigger schools to prepare for the baby boom that was to follow. Of course, in England, they celebrate Christmas and they have their turkey at Christmas time. We don't celebrate Thanksgiving, of course. We keep the turkey survive until Christmas.
Sure,
But
the
in
turkeys are happy
Scotland,
about
they have a whole, in Scotland, they have a whole, what would you call it? Procedure for celebrating the new year, what they call first footing, visiting the neighbors. And especially if you're tall, dark, and handsome, it brings good luck to the neighbors. And
Well,
then, and later in the day, the pipe bands come out on the street. I suppose it's not very appropriate to put pipe bands on the streets on Christmas Day, but on New Year's Day, they really don't always seem to put more emphasis on the new year.
and how did you like that?
A good new year to you know, and money may you see. The song.
Oh, how does that go? I don't think am I familiar with that? How does that
New
go?
year to you know, and money may you see.
Well, that's a good one. And I don't think I'd heard that one before.
No. And when I was studying in the city, I used to like to go out on the street at night and listen to the Salvation Army band playing the Christmas carols.
Huh.
The old ones, once in Royal David City, Silent Night, and Hark the Herald. I like that, Hark the Herald Angels Sing.
Hark the herald angels sing.
The herald angels sing glory. Oh, way too high.
My fault. I started on the soprano key.
But it's
That's a beautiful
peace
one.
on earth, mercy mild,
Yes.
God and sinners reconciled.
Child.
And really, you know, what more can you wish for than these things? Peace on earth, mercy, and God and sinners reconciled. It's our responsibility to keep the Christmas message alive. You were asking about, you know, some advice I'd like to share.
Please.
And really, that would be it. In the Old Testament, God was very adamant that the parents would teach their children 2 things. Teach them the story of Israel, how God brought them out of Egypt, brought them into the promised land. And the other thing was the law. They had to teach the law to their children, because God knew that if they didn't teach their children would have nothing to teach their children.
Uncle Robert, I want to thank you so much for joining me on Christmas Around the World and speaking about your experience as a Scotsman and how or what Christmas means to you and has meant to you throughout your life. I really appreciate the time that you spent right now speaking with us. I hope the audience, you have had some time to also reflect on this. It's a very deep and a very faith-filled message. And thank you, Uncle Robert, for coming out with such sincerity with the message that you gave to us today. I really appreciate it, and I hope that you all enjoyed it as well.
It's Christmas around the world.